Okay, let's just pause everything for a moment. Imagine this right now. It's June 16th, 2025. You're there in Mumbai, maybe grabbing some shade, sipping a perfect cutting chai. Feels totally normal, right?
Just another afternoon.
Exactly. You glance at your phone, maybe checking the news, and then suddenly, bang, a headline pops up. Massive cyber attack cripples India's banking system. And just like that chai, how do you pay for it?
Oof.
Your first thought might be, okay, cash, do I have any? But the bigger question hits you. How did we not see this coming?
That scenario, it's properly chilling because, well, it feels so entirely possible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One minute, everything digital works perfectly. The next, you can't even do something as basic as pay for a drink.
It just hits home how fragile things are.
Completely. How quickly normal can just evaporate into chaos.
Precisely. And that specific moment, trying to pay for chai in a world suddenly offline, it's kind of a perfect window into why expecting the unexpected.
Well, it isn't just a nice idea anymore. It feels
Yeah.
absolutely crucial.
You sent over a whole load of material, articles, reports, news clips about recent events, stuff about preparedness here in India and globally.
Right. And the mission for this deep dives, really, is to take all that information you shared and just unpack it. Try to understand why we humans seem almost programmed to be caught off guard.
Yeah, why are we like that?
And then look at what preparedness actually looks like here and elsewhere. And maybe most importantly, what practical, actual steps you can take.
So make sense of it all. Maybe laugh at ourselves a bit for being human.
Exactly. But ultimately, help you feel a bit more in control, a bit more empowered.
Okay, let's jump into that big question then. Why are we as a species, individually too, just so consistently bad at seeing these big disruptions coming?
It's a fascinating thing, isn't it, this paradox? We've got more information than ever before, yet disaster always seems to take us by surprise. A huge part of it, psychologically speaking, is something called normalcy bias.
Normalcy bias.
Yeah, it's basically our brain's default setting. It loves routine. It prefers to believe that things will just carry on as they are because, well, they always have. Yesterday was fine, today is fine, so tomorrow must be fine too.
It's like we have this built-in stable as default mode. Keeps us calm most days, I guess.
It does, until it doesn't. And we saw this play out so starkly everywhere with the COVID-19 pandemic. Scientists have been warning for years about the risk of a new respiratory virus.
But it still felt like it came out of nowhere.
Totally. The world was largely caught flat-footed in early 2020.
Oh, I remember here in India, one week it was like debating cricket, the next nationwide lockdown, empty supermarket shelves. It was jarring. Hospitals just completely swamped.
And even looking forward, those projections you shared for June 2025, they still showed significant number, was it? Over 4.3 million active cases, 44 deaths linked to pre-existing conditions. The tail is long, the impact just lingers.
Well, undeniable.
And it's not just health crises either. Look at that awful Air India crash near Ahmedabad, June 12th, 2025. Just horrific. 241 lives lost. Only one survivor, Ramesh Vishwaskumar.
Terrible. And the initial reports mentioned a rare dual engine failure.
That was the initial finding, yes. But an event of that magnitude, it immediately throws a harsh spotlight on existing safety procedures, potential weaknesses.
And straight away, the online conversation exploded. People like Gaurav Taneja asking questions, about maintenance, about oversight.
Right, and you get the usual promises of thorough investigations, which is good, but it does make you wonder how often those probes really lead to deep systemic changes across the whole industry.
Feel like a pattern sometimes.
It can be. And another area where this kind of unpreparedness really shows up is with environmental threats. The Indian Ocean is warming up incredibly fast.
Faster than other oceans, right?
Significantly. And those reports from June 2025 were quite clear. This isn't just about sea levels rising slowly over decades. It fundamentally messes with the monsoon system.
Which is like the lifeblood for so much of India.
Absolutely. Farming, water supplies, everything. And it puts coastal cities, Chennai, Kolkata, under enormous strain.
Yeah.
Yet so much of the development focus, the big infrastructure projects, seems centered inland. New highways, new metros. It's almost like the warming ocean is happening somewhere else entirely.
It's like redecorating the house while ignoring the leaky roof, maybe. So, okay, besides just defaulting to normal, what else makes us procrastinate on getting ready for these big things?
Well, a big factor, especially when you look at governments and even big companies, is the constant tension between short-term gains and long-term resilience.
The immediate versus the future.
Exactly. Building a shiny new metro line, That gives you visible progress now, jobs now, good headlines now. Investing heavily in, say, unseen cybersecurity upgrades or reinforcing flood defenses for a storm that might hit in 5 years, that feels less urgent.
Less glamorous for sure.
And the political or financial payoff isn't immediate. It's not in the next election cycle or the next quarterly earnings report.
And let's be real, on a personal level, we're masters of distraction, aren't we? We can get completely sucked into debates that are, ultimately pretty minor in the grand scheme of things.
Like the eternal Kohli versus Ronaldo Goet debate.
Exactly. That kind of stuff can consume so much mental energy that arguably could be spent thinking about, I don't know, having a basic plan if the power goes out for 3 days.
It's incredibly human, though. The immediate, engaging argument always feels more compelling than planning for some abstract future problem.
Okay, true. So let's narrow the focus back down a bit. Talk specifically about India's situation with preparedness. It feels like, from the material, a very mixed picture. Some real wins, but also some really persistent gaps.
That feels like a very fair summary. India's dealt with a lot over the years. Cyclones, earthquakes, terror attacks. And that experience, well, it forces learning, often very tough learning.
Definitely seen progress. The National Disaster Management Authority, the NDMA, that was set up after the 2004 tsunami, right? That feels like a big step.
Huge. A critical development. And they've undoubtedly saved countless lives since then. Their focus on early warning systems, evacuation drills right down at the community level, that's made a real difference.
Yeah, I remember the example of Cyclone Amphan in 2020. Odisha evacuated over 1 million people, and casualties were relatively low considering the storm's power. That's down to that NDMA groundwork.
Absolutely. A direct result of building that preparedness capacity over years. It's a powerful example of what can be achieved.
And they seem to be trying to learn from newer crises, too, like that mock drill on June 2nd, 2025, testing oxygen supply systems. Clearly a lesson learned from the pandemic pressures.
Those are definite positives, key successes. But then you pivot and look at other areas, and, well, the picture gets murkier. Urban planning, for instance.
Yeah.
In many big cities, Delhi, Bengaluru. It feels incredibly precarious, like a giant game of Jenga, just waiting for the wrong piece to be pulled.
And you see the results every monsoon season. The flooding in Chennai, for example, happens again and again. And it's not just heavy rain, is it?
No, it's directly made worse by building over natural floodplains, wetlands, basically destroying the city's natural drainage. Roads become rivers in minutes. And another major vulnerability that came up repeatedly is cybersecurity. Certain India's cyber emergency team flagged over 1.5 million incidents back in 2024 alone.
1.5 million. Wow.
Yeah. And despite that number, our critical infrastructure banks, railways, power grids feels worryingly exposed.
Which loops right back to that opening nightmare scenario with the chai and the frozen banking system.
Exactly. The Reserve Bank of India, the RBI, they did stress tests in 2025. Their findings were pretty blunt. A major cyber attack could realistically freeze transactions for days.
It's chaos that would cause.
Immense. Socially, economically, just huge.
Okay, changing tack slightly. What about defense and diplomacy? India's definitely been active on the world stage, like at the 2025 Shangri-La Dialogue, pushing hard on cross-border terrorism, sending diverse delegations. I think Shashi Tharoor was mentioned.
Diplomacy is always crucial, building those relationships, pushing for consensus. That's valuable work. But some analyses suggest that while the defense budget is pretty large, around $81 billion in 2025, there's a gap.
A gap in terms of?
In terms of investing more in really cutting-edge tech, things like AI-driven surveillance, advanced missile defense systems, stuff needed to counter the evolving threats out there. Diplomacy needs that hard power backing it up.
Got it. And then there's the whole demographic and economic layer. Population hit 1.46 billion in 2025. Huge number. But the fertility rate is actually dipping below replacement level, below 2.1.
Right. So you have this enormous bulge of working age people, like 68% of the population, which everyone talks about as this massive potential advantage, the demographic dividend.
What is it?
What could he? But as a 2025 UN report apparently warned, if you don't have enough jobs, enough skills training for that huge group, it risks turning into the opposite of potential demographic disaster. And unemployment figures, like from CME, were still stubbornly high, around 7.8%.
That's a lot of potential, just sitting there. A lot of vulnerability.
Yeah. And you see economic vulnerabilities pop up in unexpected ways, too.
Yeah.
Like that point about the entertainment industry, massive, right? RS 12,000 crore.
Huge.
But then look at the contrast. Bollywood, the traditional giant, seemed to be struggling. That Houseful 5 example, 19 stars apparently, and only a Raz 24 crore opening. Ouch.
Especially when compared to.
Compared to South Indian films, smashing records.
Hmm.
Pushpa 2, reportedly pulling in Rs 889 crore. It's maybe a slightly quirky analogy, but it shows how quickly established players can become vulnerable, and newer, maybe more agile ones could just surge ahead.
It definitely highlights how even apparent strength can hide weaknesses. Okay, let's zoom back out again. Because
Sure.
it's not just India feeling this pressure, right? The whole global situation feels, well, edgy.
Edgy is a good word. Yeah, it absolutely does. Geopolitical tensions are really simmering. You had Malaysia's leader, Anwar Ibrahim, at that same 2025 Shangri-La dialogue, calling the U.S.-China dynamic a new Cold War.
Which puts whole regions like Southeast Asia, ASEAN in a really awkward spot.
Exactly, caught in the middle. And with potential leadership changes like Trump possibly returning in the U.S., those tensions could easily ramp up further.
And then you've got actual shooting conflicts.
Right, like the Israel-Iran missile exchanges back in June 2025. These things don't happen in a vacuum. They send shockwaves globally, oil prices spike, markets get jittery, supply chains get disrupted.
And draped over all of this is climate change, just relentlessly turning up the heat.
Literally. The IPCC's 2025 report basically confirmed we've hit that 1.5 degrees C global temperature rise threshold, and we're seeing the consequences everywhere.
More intense heat waves.
Scorching Europe, massive wildfires like in Australia, more powerful hurricanes hitting the U.S.
It feels relentless.
It does. And sometimes it's not the huge climate disaster, but smaller tragedies that expose gaps, like that awful Malaysia bus crash in June 2025, killing 15 students. A terrible reminder about basic infrastructure safety and preparedness on a local level, too.
And globally, that cyber threat isn't going away either.
Far from it. Remember the SolarWinds hack in the U.S. back in 2024? Showed how breaching just one software provider could compromise huge networks, government and corporate.
Scary stuff.
And now, with 5G rolling out everywhere, everything becoming interconnected with the Internet of Things, some experts are seriously talking about a potential cyber pandemic, something that could potentially dwarf even COVID in terms of disruption.
Wow, okay, honestly, feeling a little bit overwhelmed hearing all this laid out. But you did mention earlier, some places are doing better at preparing. Are there actual role models out there?
There are, thankfully, which gives us something to aim for. Japan is often held up as an example, especially for earthquake preparedness.
Right, their building codes are legendary.
Incredibly strict. And disaster drills are just a normal part of life there, from schools to workplaces. They've woven resilience into the very fabric of their society and infrastructure.
And New Zealand was another one.
Yes, their Get Ready campaign is a really effective public awareness initiative. And the result? Apparently, something like 60% of households there report having basic emergency kits ready to go.
60%. That's impressive.
It really is. A stark contrast to many places where having an emergency kit might still seem a bit eccentric or overly cautious.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Sitting there, staring at that cup of chai, unable to pay. Enough about governments and global trends for a sec. What about you, the person listening right now? What can you actually do?
Right. And this is where it gets empowering, I think. Because yes, systemic change is vital, but waiting around for governments to fix everything, that's not really a plan. Personal preparedness is where you can take control.
And it doesn't mean building a fallout shelter in the garden.
Exactly. It's about practical, achievable steps based on all that material you shared.
And number one on the list has to be the emergency kit, right? The grab-and-go bag.
Absolutely fundamental. You need that 3-day supply of water. The guideline is usually about 1 liter per person per day. And non-perishable food.
Think staples.
Yeah, things like dal, rice, canned beans, maybe some energy bars, stuff that lasts and gives you actual sustenance, not just, a multi-pack of Maggi, although
Maybe 1 pack for morale.
maybe 1 pack for morale. Definitely. But beyond food and water, a good first aid kit is essential. A reliable flashlight, check the batteries regularly, and a portable power bank for your phone.
Crucial these days.
Totally. And also, copies of your vital documents, IDs, insurance papers, some physical cash, remember the chai problem, small denominations are best, and any essential prescription meds you rely on.
And maybe something non-essential too, like for sanity. A deck of cards, a book.
Great point. Something non-digital to keep you occupied if the power's out and the internet's down. Keep it all together in one bag, ideally waterproof, and somewhere you can grab it easily.
Not buried under a mountain of laundry.
Please no.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be a survival expert, but knowing a few basics really helps.
Like what?
Like how to use a fire extinguisher, Basic CPR that can literally save a life. Knowing how to make water safe to drink, even just boiling it. There are great resources like the Indian Red Cross First Aid app.
Simple things.
Simple, potentially life-saving things. And honestly, in this age of GPS telling us every turn, learn how to read an actual physical map, just the basics. If the grid goes down, that skill is suddenly priceless.
Good point. And simple home safety stuff counts too.
Definitely. If you're in an earthquake zone Gujarat, the Northeast, anchor heavy furniture. If you're prone to floods, know where you can quickly move valuables and electronics to higher ground. Check your gas connections periodically. Basic checks.
Okay, evacuation planning, that feels a bit more involved.
It does, but the material really stressed its importance. Don't just know one way out of your home or neighborhood, know two. Have a pre-agreed family meeting point somewhere safe, away from the immediate area.
And practice it, even if it feels a bit silly.
Especially if it feels silly. If you live near the coast or a river, know exactly where your nearest high ground is. And that tip about keeping the car fuel tank at least half full, genius. You do not want to run out of petrol in an evacuation traffic jam. Think zombie apocalypse traffic.
Right. Okay, staying informed is vital too, but how do you filter out the noise and panic?
It's about being deliberate. Stick to credible sources. NDMA, the IMD weather updates, reliable international news like the BBC. Use official apps, disaster management India, my earthquake alerts were mentioned.
And actively tune out the other stuff.
Yeah, actively resist getting sucked down rabbit holes of conspiracy theories or, frankly, irrelevant social media drama. Fretting about Andre Onana's latest transfer saga isn't going to help you find clean water if the taps run dry.
Fair point. And protecting your money, that's a practical step people might overlook.
Hugely important. Keep some cash at home, small notes preferably. A RS-100 note could be way more useful than a RS-2000 note if no one can make change. Diversified savings don't have everything in one digital pot, like a single Zeroth account, for instance. Spread it out FDs, maybe some gold, mutual funds.
And passwords.
Oh yeah, back up critical digital wallet passwords somewhere secure off the device itself, because that device might be dead or gone when you need it.
Okay, this last practical area feels less about stuff and more about people. Community.
And honestly, it might be the most crucial piece of the puzzle. Get to know your neighbors, seriously. In any immediate crisis, they're your first responders.
Before any official help arrives.
Exactly. They know the area. They might have schools you don't. Maybe they have a generator or extra water. Join your local RWA, your Resident Welfare Association. Get involved. Communities that look out for each other, that plan together, they're just fundamentally more resilient.
Preparing together makes everyone stronger. So, okay, we've got all this great practical advice. Why is it still so hard to actually do it? Why do we keep saying, yeah, I'll sort that out next month?
Back to the psychology. It's that present bias again. We are just wired to value immediate rewards, binge watching that show, ordering takeout much more highly than future safety.
Instant gratification wins.
Almost always. And layered on top is that incredibly persistent, it won't happen to me feeling. We see floods or earthquakes on the news, but somehow we think our house, our neighborhood is magically exempt. We compartmentalize.
So how do you fight that inertia? The material had some cool ideas, actually.
Yeah, make it less of a drag. Turn assembling your kit into a weekend DIY project. Challenge your friends to a survival showdown who can put together the best basic kit first. Reward yourself when you tick something off the list. Get that pizza after you bought the extra batteries.
Make it positive, not just anxiety-driven.
Exactly. And the other big hack? Start small.
Don't try to do it all at once.
No way. That's overwhelming. This week, just buy the extra water. Next week, pick up a basic first aid kit from the chemist. Tiny steps build momentum. They make the whole thing feel manageable.
And talking about it helps too, right?
Definitely. Tell your family, tell your friends what you're planning. It creates a bit of accountability. Plus, you might learn something. Maybe your cousin's friend put in solar panels and has great tips for handling power cuts.
Right. Okay, bringing it back to the bigger picture one last time. Individual action is key, we get that. But the system itself needs fixing too.
It absolutely does. The NDMA does good work. But reports suggest they need more resources, more staff, more funding to really fulfill their potential. That CAG report from 2025 was pretty damning, flagging delays in projects, pointing out that only about 40% of allocated disaster funds were actually being used effectively.
So the money's there, but not getting spent right.
Seems like it. We need that investment channeled properly into early warning systems, genuinely resilient infrastructure, and much better public education campaigns.
Priorities need to shift.
Massively. Urban planning needs a radical rethink. Stop allowing construction on natural flood barriers. The source material pointed out India's huge infrastructure budget, Rs 2.7 lakh crore, but barely a sliver was specifically earmarked for flood defenses,
Compared to somewhere like the Netherlands.
where something like 25% of their national budget goes towards water management. It just shows a completely different level of prioritizing that known risk. Real foresight.
And cybersecurity needs to be more than just PDFs sitting on a server somewhere.
Exactly. It needs constant, active work, employing ethical hackers to find weaknesses before the bad guys do. Regular, tough stress testing of critical systems. A national strategy document is fine, but it needs teeth. It needs constant execution.
And communities and schools, they have a role too.
A massive role.
Mm.
RWAs can organize drills, coordinate bulk buys of emergency gear. Schools should absolutely be teaching basic first aid and disaster response skills alongside maths and history. Imagine what to do in an earthquake 101.
Normalizing it.
Precisely. Making preparedness normal, not niche. Instead of judging the person with the well-stocked emergency bag, maybe ask them for advice.
Okay. Wow. We've covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive, from like global power struggles down to what kind of doll lasts longest in storage.
It really highlights it, doesn't it? The world is unpredictable. Recent events just keep proving our vulnerability. And preparedness, well, it's not just about surviving the worst-case scenario. It's about building resilience on every single level, you as an individual, your community, and the government too.
And the payoff isn't just safety, is it? It's also about feeling capable, less anxious.
Totally. It's about peace of mind. Knowing you've taken steps, even small ones, gives you a sense of agency, of confidence. You become that person who stays calm, who knows what to do when things get chaotic. Maybe not quite the Shah Rukh Khan of crisis management.
Probably with a more practical outfit.
Probably. But yeah, think of it as an emotional insurance policy for navigating an uncertain world.
So here's the bottom line. The world's going to keep throwing curveballs. Oceans will warm, cyber threats will get smarter, and yeah, maybe Bollywood box office results will keep surprising us.
But you don't have to feel completely adrift in all that uncertainty. The information's out there. The steps, as we've discussed, are actually pretty clear and doable.
Right. So our challenge to you, listening right now, before this week is out, pick just one thing, one specific action from everything we've talked about.
So what?
Buy that water filter. Download that first aid app. Go knock on your neighbor's door and actually introduce yourself properly. Maybe talk about an emergency contact plan. Just do one thing.
And hey, maybe even share it. Stick it online, hashtag #PrepLikeBoss or something. Make it a conversation starter, not some hidden anxiety.
Because really, the most powerful takeaway from all of this, from all the sources, seems to be this simple truth. The only thing worse than a crisis actually hitting
Is facing it completely unprepared. Something to think about. And maybe add to this week's shopping list.